Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started shortly. Welcome to the Garden of Knowledge, Dixit Algoritmi. You're here in what is a sort of landscape of shared knowledge and what over the past few months has hosted numerous, almost nearly weekly performances, conversations, events, dance performances like we saw yesterday. In hopes of bridging new collaborations, new networks, and forming a community of artists here in Venice that come from both Uzbekistan, but really internationally. And today we're going to see the final performance of one of the ongoing research and works by Charli Tapp, which is connected to this piano here that maybe some of you have seen performing autonomously over the past months here in the Biennale. Today, Charli will be performing together with Furtherset, a Venetian musician, and it will be recorded by Radio Raheem from Milano that is here. We're really excited to have this final opportunity to share with you the works here in the pavilion, and I'm Sofia Pia from Space Caviar. We're the designers of the pavilion, and we are also the co-curators of the public program together with Sheda Gomashi.
Thank you. So a few words on the concept of the Pavilion of National Pavilion of Uzbekistan this year. Actually, the design and the concept is a nod and is an homage to the figure of Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, who is like a polymath and scientist from 8th century of Uzbekistan, who lent his name to the algorithm, which we know and use today without knowing much about the background of it. And actually, it is also, we follow the path of Al-Khwarizmi to Baghdad and his tenure at the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, which we don't know much about the design of it, the construction of it, but we know that it was a place where people and scientists, polymaths, and philosophers from all around the world were gathering around in it, and for the dialogue and exchange and conversation on the topics of the era. So we decided not to showcase an art piece in this pavilion, apart from the piece of the music part from the Charli's work, but to invite to host different events, as Sofia said, international and Uzbek artists, scientists, philosophers from different backgrounds to have the conversation. And today is our last event, and we are really happy to have you all here, Charli and Tommaso and Radio Raheem. Hope you enjoy it, and please take part in the conversation whenever you feel like, and whenever you have comments or any questions, notes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Luisa Santacesaria. I'm here with Radio Raheem. I'm really happy to be today together with Charli Tapp, composer and visual artist, to tell you what is going to happen in a few minutes here in the Uzbekistan National Pavilion in the last day of the Venice Biennale 2022. One of the works on display in this beautiful pavilion is Velocity0, and Velocity0 is a sound installation created by Charli Tapp. And this sound installation is driven by computerized processes that control 88 electromagnets hitting on a keyboard of a Yamaha grand piano. And in the first days of this Biennale, Velocity0 interacted with a musician, a Uzbek musician, Abrar Zufarov, in a series of performances that were basically a real-time dialogue between a human and a machine. And those performances were called Transcode Transmute, and they were based on the Shash Makam. It is a really complex musical system that is typical from the Uzbekistan national music, traditional music. And after that time, so this machine, this sound installation, diffused all around this beautiful pavilion a series of soundscapes, basically, that were created by Charli Tapp and a few composers that Charli invited to interact with the machine, to send inputs to the machine through an app called the program. And one of these composers is Tommaso Pandolfi, Furtherset, that is going to interact and perform right after our conversation. And so I would like to ask Charli, so I summarize briefly what is the history, but I would like you to tell us about the history of this project, of this sound installation, from its conception till now, if you like.
Thank you very much, first of all, for this very clear and well-structured introduction, because it is a very complex project, because luckily it's a very long project, so it's not easy to summarize the journey that it's going through. And the journey actually started a few years ago, back in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, through another collaboration with Space Caviar. And at that time, it was for the Biennale Design of Saint-Étienne in France that we first conceived the first version of the piano that evolved since then. At that time, the idea was to have a piano that could play generative music scores, so meaning music that is being written endlessly rather than pre-written. And at that time, we based our script on the music of Terry Riley and the score in C, which I think is a foundational piece of music and architecture somehow. But that's another topic. And oftentimes when you do an art piece, you retire it after the exhibition, and it's quite incredible to get a chance to actually have this one, which is kind of alive, continue its journey through time and space, as we brought it last November or October to Uzbekistan, which was already in and of itself an absolutely crazy endeavor to engage in. And we brought it there without clear knowledge of what would happen. And I met with Abrar Zufarov, the musician who participated in the opening here. And he had this style of music that's called the Sash Mahom that was absolutely incredibly complicated. And I had this idea that I would try to use neural network systems, meaning AI that can understand music and spit back music that sounds like it, to see if it could understand something out of Abrar's music. It couldn't, because our tools are very Western-centric, and I don't think it's a voluntary bias. It's just a matter of fact, you know. And so we had a concert in glitch and misunderstanding for a month back in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. And then we were invited to bring this project to the Biennale as a try of communication between this musical heritage and these rather recent technologies. But I think it was not interesting to reproduce the experiment, because once an experiment is done, it's not an experiment anymore, you know the result. So I tried to take it a step further and to set up an algorithm that could actually enable Abrar to communicate with the machine. So yeah, that was the inception of it.
What I think it's really fascinating of this work, and it's that if you observe it, it's like a piano playing alone, so it seems controlled by an artificial intelligence, although that there is a strong human component in it, in its conception, underlying its functioning. Also, if we see the first performances with Abrar Zufarov and with Velocity0, we can see that he is interacting with Velocity0, but still the machine is interacting with him. So we can say that it's basically a meeting point between human and machine, between human intelligence and technology. So I would like you to explain a little bit this double nature of this project, and also if there is a relationship with the main theme of the pavilion.
Well, I think something that this pavilion gave a great opportunity to underline, you know, there have been these, I mean, you may be all familiar with what happened, but there were these talks and conferences throughout the duration of the Biennale, and a common theme or a common comment that would come back is this this parallel confrontation between human and machine. And I think it's on everyone's mind, and rightfully so. You know, we're replacing labor forces with machineries. Now we're maybe replacing a part of creation with AI tools, and it is frightening, it is threatening, and so I understand that it's on everybody's mind. But what I tried to approach it a bit differently with Velocity0, because I think that this way that we look at it is also wrong in a way, because the algorithms and the machines that we create them. They are our own, right? They do not grow in the wild like trees do. So they are a very, very human product, and they might just be the most human thing that we've come up with so far. And so I much more look at us as cyborgs, in a way, and using those machines as extension of ourselves and our capacity rather than in a confrontational way. So this setting here, I think, was a great moment to explore that. And this machine, I say, in the end, it's just a piano that plays on its own, and I think that the abstraction of it is very important, and also the physicality of it, because when you address these virtual tools and processes, sometimes the abstraction creates this disconnect between us and the tools. But I think that when you materialize it, you know, in this case with the electromagnets and the physicality of the piano, you also remember that, you know, the computer is running on a processor, and like all that is made of sand, and I think that's the site that we need to keep is the physicality related to those technologies.
And what we are going to experience in a few moments is called a stress test of Velocity0 that will feature the participation of electronic musician Tommaso Pandolfi, Furtherset. And so I would like you to explain what are we going to expect, and so what are also the listeners of Radio Raheem will watch and listen to when they will see this video and this piece.
I mean, to be really honest, I have no idea, because it is an experiment in itself. So there is not a preconceived idea of exactly what's going to happen. We set up a protocol with Tommaso, and it was really interesting to go full circle with him, because, as you said, he was one of the participants in the program, but he was also the first participant in the program. So I think it's great to conclude with him. Initially, when he participated in the app, he sent audio material to the piano without knowing how the piano would react, and without having any control over it. That was the rule of the game, basically. And this time he gets the chance to talk directly face-to-face and establish a dialogue. The idea is that initially, when we worked with Abror, he was playing a traditional instrument, a tambor, which is a stringed instrument, which is fairly sensitive, I would say, in the sound that it produces, and gentle in a way. So it was not too complex for the piano to follow along once it was programmed appropriately. But in this perspective of trying to remember ourselves of the materiality of these machines, I thought that inviting Tommaso, who's an electronic musician and creates these wall of sound, basically, they're like abstract landscapes of sound and comes in block. I wanted to push the piano and see how far it could kind of, you know, talk back with Tommaso, and that's you know, when you test a machine like an engine, a car, whatever, and you try to push it to the limit, to the breaking point, that's called a stress test, and that's essentially what we're going to try to do today with Velocity0. So the expectation are as follows. One, I think it's going to be a rather meditative experience because of the nature of Tommaso's music and the nature of how Velocity will interact. So I hope we can get lost in the space between both of them rather than in the sound of either of them. And two, the border would be that I hope it does not catch fire. That is, if it does, there's like some safety device and so on and so forth, so we should be fine. But though the third thing is, if it stops working, hopefully it's in a spectacular way and not in a, you know, in a sad and disappointing way. But if all goes well, it would be super interesting, because the electromagnets, which are basically like these cylinders that are above the keys, they have small metal rods inside that are pushed out by electrical impulse, and they have a physical limitation of speed that they can achieve, how fast they can go down, how fast they can go up. And this is very similar to when a piano player plays the piano. You know, your fingers have a limitation, but the piano mechanics inside of the piano also have a limitation. And this piano, though it looks very technologic like this, it is a grand piano. It is stringed inside and has all the normal mechanics. So it will be interesting to see if we can push it to the edge, and what will happen in this moment of quasi-failure of the system. So with this, I think that also music is self-explanatory in a way. So I hope that in parallel to all these information that you now have, you can also simply appreciate or at least listen to the piece in also a an emotional and physical way, which I think is also what is meant to be, and is also what Tommaso's music is meant to be.
Okay. So thank you very much, Charli Tapp. And now, so it's time for the performance,
The stress test.
Velocity0, featuring Tommaso Pandolfi, Furtherset. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
you very much. Do you want to say a few words?
No, okay. Thank you for your attention. I think it was an amazing way to say goodbye to this pavilion, to